Good evening. My name is Michael Llewellyn, Board Chair for the Urban League of Portland. We thank you for joining us this evening for our annual membership and supporters meeting. For more than 76 years, the Urban League of Portland has been Oregon and Southwest Washington's premier organization fighting social, economic, and racial injustice. To say that the last fiscal year, 2020-2021, has been difficult is probably the understatement of the century. What COVID-19 has done in terms of our resources, what has happened to our community, our nation, and our world has been unprecedented. Yet, as we start to turn the curve and work our way back to normal days, we're thankful that you've joined us to get a report on how your Urban League is doing. I'd like to thank our board of directors. I'd like to thank our sponsors and benefactors whose resources have made the work that we do in this community possible, whether it's youth services, senior services, employment assistance, as well as being advocates for those who are unserved and unheard. We continue to proudly be, as you've often heard me say, once an urban leaguer, always an urban leaguer. This is also a special day because it's Juneteenth, a holiday that more and more of us are becoming aware of, especially since just this week, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, signed into federal law, making Juneteenth a federal holiday in the United States. For those of you who don't know, Juneteenth is the day that the last bastions of slavery and slaves in Texas finally got the word that freedom had come their way. There's a lot to learn about Juneteenth. There's some that people know, some things that we don't know. We're going to share some information with you about that tonight. You'll also get an insight into our services over the past year. You will hear from some who have benefited from what the Urban League of Portland has been doing for more than 76 years. You'll also get an overview of our financial health to see how your resources and the resources from our partners are being put to good use. And you will also hear from our President and CEO, Nkenge Harmon Johnson, as she takes you through her mission, our mission, and your mission. So thank you again for joining us for the annual membership and supporters meeting for the Urban League of Portland. An important milestone was reached this week when the United States Congress passed and President Joe Biden signed a law designating June 19th, Juneteenth, as a federal holiday. There's an important backstory that goes with the Juneteenth holiday, and we're proud to bring that backstory to you this evening through the voice of Dr. Daryl Milner, Professor Emeritus of Black Studies at Portland State University, who will share with us some different perspectives on what Juneteenth is, how slavery legally really ended in this country, and where we need to go next. Here's Dr. Milner.
Juneteenth started as a local celebration of the moment in Texas history when the Union Army arrived and, for all practical purposes, delivered the reality of Lincoln's proclamation that slavery would be ended in all of those parts of the country that were disloyal to the Union on January the 1st, 1863. General Gordon Granger came to Galveston, Texas on June 19th, 1865, made the pronouncement that now the Union Army was in control of Texas and that the proclamation would be enforced from that point on. And of course, the local blacks were overjoyed to finally get the opportunity to have a taste of freedom. It probably was not the first they had heard of that coming possibility. The slave grapevine everywhere in the South during the Civil War was very effective, and information about the war was widely available to blacks in the South, and Texas included. So it was probably not the first time they heard of the possibility that their freedom would arrive with Granger and his army, but it was the first time that they actually had to feel, and it had the effect of being a material reality for them for the first time on June the 19th, 1865.
How then did it grow from a local observance in Texas there in the 19th century into what has now emerged as a national commemoration?
Well, the original celebrations were not called Juneteenth. The first one was held in 1866. It's not until about 1903 that the term Juneteenth is applied to the celebration. And that corresponded with the beginning of what we call in American social history, the urban migration of blacks out of the South into the West and into the northern cities of the country as racial circumstances and really the economic and social circumstances of the country begin to change in the early 20th century. And as blacks migrate from Texas to other parts of the country, the celebration migrated with them. And because it's always nice to have a holiday, and I take all holidays, it became a fixture in black communities in many other parts of the country as well. But it originated as a local celebration, basically in Galveston, and then spreading to Texas, and then to the rest of the country.
Did June 19th, 1865 actually mark the end of slavery of blacks in the United States?
No, it didn't. And that's the reason why, for a person who teaches black history in the context of race in America today, the Juneteenth celebration that we are now going to be experiencing on the national level offers some positive points and some points of caution. If you teach black history in this country, especially in our current racial context, one of the things that you're always aware of is you cannot afford to make mistakes. People tend to look at black history as a topic that always has to be correct. If you make any mistakes in the presentation of black history, people now have an opportunity to dismiss it all. And that's constantly on the mind of a person in a position like myself who teaches black history. And Juneteenth especially represents a situation in which it's easy to violate that basic dictate of teaching black history, because the celebration itself arose not from the academic world, not from the world of research and the study and teaching of history, but as a community celebration. And it reflected those community origins. And consequently, sometimes the overall and the larger history of emancipation and the end of legal slavery in the country is a bit lost in the celebration of the Juneteenth event. And I think the significant thing to remember about Juneteenth, and also about the way that we teach black history and really any history in America, is that we have a tendency to both simplify and sanitize the history that we present, especially the racial history that we present. And that has, I think, been reflected in the way that Juneteenth has been selected as the kind of symbolic end of slavery in the country. Legally and practically, the real end of slavery in American history was the adoption of the 13th Amendment in December in 1865, almost a half a year after the Juneteenth celebration. And it represented a good deal of irony in terms of how slavery ended, both in the North and the South in the country. Most people who approach the topic of the end of slavery are familiar with the common symbolic touch point that is a part of the way that we present that part of American history. And it's an association with Abraham Lincoln, who we've labeled the great emancipator, and I think justly so, and a proclamation that he issued first in September of 1862 to go into effect on January the 1st, 1863. What Lincoln did with his first preliminary and then final proclamation was to tell the Confederate states who were trying to leave the Union and form their own country based on slavery, that if they insisted on maintaining their desire to leave the United States and create their own country, then on January the 1st in 1863, their slaves would be free. If they remained loyal to the Union or came back into loyalty to the Union in the 3 months between September and January, then they would be allowed to keep their slaves. And so it was an offer that he made to them that they eventually declined, but it was a military decision that he made. It was an executive order. Now, so that compromises and makes difficult to understand the context of how slavery is going to end in this country, starting with that military proclamation. Now, Lincoln was never fully confident that a presidential declaration like that could legally end slavery. And that's why he wanted to pursue a change to the country's constitution that eventually becomes the 13th Amendment. And immediately after his proclamation is issued, he begins work on adopting that 13th Amendment so that it will become a part of the fundamental law of the land, rather than just a presidential proclamation. So we have, after the proclamation goes into effect, a very ironic situation in the country. The slaves of the disloyal population in part of the country are now, as far as Lincoln was concerned, technically free, but they weren't practically free. And practically free would only come when the Union Army reached the area in which they were in residence. That was the only way that Lincoln would have now control over their eventual fate. Now, the other compromising problem was that although we often present the Civil War as a battle between the slave states and the free states, there were actually 4 slave states that remained in the Union: Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware. They were states in which the proclamation did not touch the black population because those states were still loyal to the Union. So technically, the slaves of the disloyal part of the nation were actually free before the slaves of the loyal part of the nation. And in the border states, in 1865, there were approximately 1 million black people that were touched by being left out of the proclamation. So slavery ended in a piecemeal fashion. And the last slaves to be freed were not the slaves in Texas or the slaves in any part of the Confederacy. They were the slaves in Kentucky and Delaware. Kentucky had probably as many as 100,000 slaves in 1865, Delaware about 1,000. So to fully understand the end of slavery, you have to understand the details in how that event unfolded. And it's important to remember the difference between an event and a process. Juneteenth was an event that we can symbolize and use as a symbol for that important turning point in the lives of many black Americans at the time of the Civil War. But it's not a definition of how the institution of slavery ended in the state. To fully appreciate that, we have to acknowledge what a difficult decision that was for the country to come to. The proclamation itself was passed and adopted by December of 1865, but it was a process that took well over 2 years, and it was a process that almost didn't happen. Lincoln is not the great emancipator because of the Emancipation Proclamation. He's the great emancipator because of the political work that he did between April of 1864, when the Senate adopted the 13th Amendment, and January of 1865, when the House adopted. The political struggle that took place in the House in that 6 or 7 months was tremendous. And it was the trench warfare, the hand-to-hand infighting of political warfare that Lincoln's administration was able to apply to that effort that finally meant that there would be an official end of slavery in the country. And so I think we have to acknowledge that that's really what made Lincoln the great emancipator. But we also have to acknowledge the difficulty of that achievement. In the House vote in January of 1865, it was required that the amendment receive 117 votes in favor. In the final tally, they only got 119, and that's how close it was. And that's how close we came not to ending slavery in that Civil War conflict. So to fully understand the significance of the end of slavery, we have to recognize, first of all, how difficult it was, and that simply recognizing kind of a symbolic event like Juneteenth is not going to give us the kind of momentum and the kind of commitment and motivation we need to fully recognize the legacy that slavery still has on the generation that we live in today. To do that, we have to understand the difficulty and the complexity of how slavery legally ended in the country. Now, Juneteenth in comparison, I think the most reasonable comparison I could make is with the 4th of July. The 4th of July is a symbolic representation of the creation of this country. It's based on the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. But of course, this country was not created in 1776, and it did not get its independence in 1776. What happened in 1776 was that the 13 original colonies declared that they wanted to be free. They still had to fight a war for the next 5 years. They still had to negotiate a peace treaty with England that took a further 2 years. And they still had to experiment with government that took the next 7 years in a period that we call the Articles of Confederation. The United States of America did not begin in 1776. It began with the first administration of George Washington in 1790. So I consider Juneteenth to be that similar kind of symbolic representation of an important turning point in American life, but it was an event. The end of slavery was a process. It was a process that we still are involved in, because the legacy of slavery is what this generation has to be most concerned with, not necessarily the legal end of slavery. And it's so important to understand that the end of slavery was a process, because in terms of the issues of race that we face today in the country, we are entering really the most difficult part of our task in addressing that legacy of slavery. And people might, they might wonder, well, wasn't it hard enough before? And certainly it was. And lives were sacrificed, and lives were lost, and careers were lost. And all of those victories that we won between the end of the Civil War and the generation that we're in today, those were hard fought and well-deserved victories. But they represent a different kind of problem in terms of the legacy of slavery. The problems that they represented were very visible. You could see a white-only sign. You could see a sign that said blacks need to sit at the back of the bus. You could see those kind of very visible reflections of the Jim Crow realities that come into place after the Civil War, not before and not during. Mm-hmm. And those kind of battles are different battles than the kind we are faced with today. Everyone is familiar with the George Floyd situation that we recently passed through. And the great ally that the black experience had, and those people who are in favor of racial progress in the country had, was technology. We had that as an ally in all of the battles in the first stage of our battle against the legacy of slavery. So the automobile gave mobility to a black population that could spread Juneteenth around the country. The airplane made it possible for black people to leave the South in a more efficient way. Television in the 1960s made the civil rights movement a national event, not just a local affair in terms of the southern part of the country. All of those technological developments helped us win those battles. The most recent one is the best example of that. When people could see that knee on that neck and see a murder committed in front of their own eyes, mm-hmm. because of the new technology that we have in the cameras and the internet and the web and all of those things that made that vision a worldwide experience, that helped us reach the point that we are now. But we have to move beyond that point, and that's why this particular event is so dangerous in many ways. It can be a reflection of what we might term a superficial victory rather than a substantial victory. And in the next phase of fighting that legacy of slavery, we need substantial victories that are not going to be helped by the kind of technological advances that we benefited from in the past. Now, when we talk about race, because we are entering that next stage seriously, we talk about phrases like systemic racism, institutional racism. Those are not things that you can catch on a camera. And that's what's going to make the next stage of our struggle so much more difficult and so much more important. And the reason that's connected to the Juneteenth celebration and understanding the real end of legal slavery in the country is those systemic issues, those institutionalizations of racial patterns and dynamics were created not during slavery, but after slavery in the Jim Crow period. And they are the reason why I think it's legitimate to say that the South lost the Civil War, but won the peace that followed. It was their pattern of behavior that became the generalized pattern of racial behavior in the country. And those were the things that were put in place in that first generation after slavery was ended. That's a crucial period in the development of the country. when all of the major institutions that are going to define American life in this generation are being created. Free public education, large-scale capitalism, monopoly capitalism, all of the institutions that are going to define the academic disciplines that people study when they go to college today. All of those are invented in the age after the Civil War, when Jim Crow is going to be implanted and infused into the institutions of American life. The next stage of our battle is to root those infusions, those aspects of Jim Crow racism that were infused into our institutions. We have to bring them to the surface and we have to address them, just as we've addressed the issues of the civil rights period and the technological period of George Floyd that we're recently passing through. So for those reasons, it's important to acknowledge and to understand the difference between a symbolic holiday like June the 10th and understanding the actual process of how you end an institution like slavery that existed for essentially 3 centuries before it was eradicated. It would be unrealistic to expect that a legacy that long and that powerful would not still be impactful in the society that we live in today. And so we have to recognize that transition, and I consider it to be the most important transition in American racial history, from when slavery was legal to when slavery is not legal, as a beginning point of that process of addressing that legacy. It will take us a long time and hard work and probably more lives lost and more careers lost, but it's the kind of commitment that we have to make in this generation. And the Juneteenth acknowledgement that President Biden recently signed, I think is just the first step in making that kind of recognition and making that kind of commitment.
Dr. Darrell Mindler, Professor Emeritus, Portland State University in Black Studies. Then briefly, what does the future then look like in your view as we summarize in this segment?
This might sound a bit naive, but I remain optimistic. And I think Black people are a tremendously optimistic group. They have remained optimistic and a part of trying to turn this country into the country that it said it wanted to be at the beginning. And I think we will continue to be that way. I also think that most people in this country, as far as race is concerned, want to do the right thing. Sometimes it's hard to recognize what the right thing is. And so I think that's our task in the immediate future and perhaps even in the next generation. We have to be able to look at that legacy of slavery that legally ended with the 13th Amendment's adoption back in 1865, and then we have to find the ways that it still has an impact on racial behavior in American life today, and then we simply have to do the right thing and be confident that most Americans want to do that.
Dr. Darrell Mindler, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And now to an important part of our program, as you will hear from Nikenge Harmon Johnson, President and CEO of the Urban League of Portland. Nikenge Harmon Johnson grew up here in Portland. She calls herself a Portland kid. She did her undergraduate work at Florida A&M University and is a lawyer trained at the Howard University School of Law. For 5 years, she has put her heart and soul into leading this organization in her hometown and in her home state. Please welcome the President and CEO of the Urban League of Portland, Nikenge Harmon Johnson.
Welcome to the Urban League annual meeting. This one looks a little different. For those of you who are used to joining us year after year as members of the Urban League, this is about the time that we gather together side by side to hug each other's necks and to celebrate the year gone by. This year, hopefully you were able to tune in from your laptops, from your mobile devices, from the comfort of your couches to join us for the annual meeting, because we're not yet able to gather in community in the same physical space. But I welcome you to this digital space with the Urban League of Portland as we celebrate the year past and look to the year to come. I am Nikenge Harmon Johnson, the Chief Executive Officer and President for the Urban League of Portland for more than 6 years now. Many of you know that the Urban League serves all of Oregon and Southwest Washington, as we have done for more than 75 years. And I am proud, along with my team of skilled, caring professionals, to deliver a unique blend of programs, services, and powerful advocacy on behalf of and side by side with our community members. The work we are honored to do day after day is designed to help all of us get free. Specifically, we work to empower and frankly to amplify the power of African Americans and others across Oregon and Southwest Washington in areas of education and housing and economic development and health and so many other ways that are necessary to live full and robust lives that we choose for ourselves. So I thank you for being with us here today, and all of you who are members who tuned in today, I appreciate your membership. Know that your membership goes to support the work that we do day by day, month by month, and year by year. For those of you who are not yet members, I invite you to join. Visit us at ulpdx.org. That's ulpdx.org, and click on the little button in the upper right-hand corner that lets you become a member of the Urban League of Portland. For those of you that are already members, like me and my family, I welcome you to make a donation to the Urban League. Every dollar that you provide, me and my team, allows us to do that much more work in our community. You're going to hear today from community members who have been touched by the Urban League's services. But something tells me that you know in your own right the power that the Urban League delivers. Perhaps you've heard of the Oregon Cares Fund. That's a $62 million fund for Black relief and resilience that was created by African American community members from all across the state of Oregon for African American community members, business owners, families, and individuals who needed support to survive the COVID-19 pandemic. The Urban League was an important leader to create that fund, and after its creation, my team was first in line to help people sign up to receive those benefits, running a hotline, creating in-person services, and offering virtual assistance so that thousands of people could benefit from those dollars to help survive what we know has been a daunting and challenging time. Beyond that, maybe you've heard of the Reimagine Oregon Project. It's a policy project and frankly work that I am extremely proud of that has gathered African Americans and others from across the state to focus on policy issues that are key to making life better for all of us. That's right, because when we make life better for Black folks in Oregon and in Southwest Washington, we make life better for everyone. That's just how it works. So you can be sure that your support of our work, be it through donations, be it through volunteering your time, creates justice for all of us. So I am terribly delighted to have you here with me today to think about, to reflect upon the year gone by, and to celebrate Juneteenth. You know now that Juneteenth is not only a state holiday in Oregon, but it's a federal holiday as well. Well, for the Urban League, that's nothing new. For years, we have been a part of, a co-sponsor, a participant in community celebrations, inviting community to come together, to gather, and to speak their truth about what it means to be Black in America, but also what freedom means to all of us. And we're delighted to see that so many other people in our community are now joining in the celebration of Juneteenth. Please know, but that's not all the work we have to do together. It's a nice tradition that we are able to share with others in our community, but there are certainly other things that we have to do together in order to make sure that all in our communities may thrive. I hope you'll stick around to hear more about the Urban League and our successes, because one of the things that we always do at our annual meeting is to report out about our financial standing. We want you to know, as our members and our supporters, that the Urban League is ready, willing, and able to continue serving you today, tomorrow, and the days to come. That's because of our firm financial standing. I also hope that after this brief annual meeting in the virtual space, you'll tune in to our social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. You can also find the Urban League of Portland on LinkedIn. I invite you to follow us, Keep track of the work that we do. Join us for the celebrations that we have, both in person and in virtual spaces. I invite you to partake in the services that we deliver, be it our youth summer camps that are kicking off in just days from now for middle schoolers, high schoolers, and young adults, to help kids have fun together, but also to teach new skills that will help them learn and to thrive for a lifetime. Perhaps you're an elder or you love an elder who wants to be able to get out and about and to engage with community, or maybe to stay home and stay safe as this pandemic continues, sadly. Well, the Urban League offers services for our elders as well that help them to have fun and also help them to stay fit. Maybe you're interested in policy work. Well, I can tell you that the Urban League also has something for you if that's the area of interest. Whatever it is, I am grateful for your time, for your attention, for your dollars, for your commitment to helping the Urban League to be and to do all that we are. With you and through you, together, we can help make Oregon and Southwest Washington a place where we all may thrive. Thank you for joining us today, and stick around.
Hello, my name is Mitchell Branch. A little bit about myself. I'm from Houston, Texas. I'm 58 years old. Um, been in Portland in and out, say over 20 years. Um, really like being here in Portland. It's been a great city for me. I graduated. I have a daughter, grandkids, and you know, uh, pretty much right now, my previous life, I'm now is disabled, two broken hips, and it's a struggle for me to go back and forth and be mobile. So it caused a lot of discomfort, stress for me. Doesn't have a stable job right now because of my disability. The Urban League has been a great help to me by actually saving my life, if I could say that. I was homeless, living in my truck, living in parks, sleeping on park benches, sleeping at certain shelters. I was sleeping anywhere that in a doorway. And when Mr. Ramon Lowe told me about the Urban League and gave me and channeled me to the certain people, and I got the interview with Miss Jody. That was a great help for me too. A very great advocate. I must say she did a great job pushing and helping me to go forward. Uh, the Urban League helped me in saving my life, if I can basically say. Uh, like I say, I was destituted, nowhere to go, sleeping in the park, sleeping in my abandoned truck, no food, no wearing the same clothes for the same 2 weeks, to a month. And when I got the interview with Miss Jody, and she told me that I was accepted, the Urban League it changes my life. It gave me a second chance. When I came to the Urban League, I was broken, hurt, no confused, didn't know which way I was going, no direction. And the Urban League accepted me into their program, and I was able to sit down and think. I was able to put a program together. I was able to go forward and actually act on the program that I had planned it, and with Miss Jody help and others that's there, uh, it gave me strength. I began to heal. Um, I had got into the City Central mental health program where some brothers would come out and talk with me once a week, and would encourage me that no matter what happened in my life, I still have an opportunity to go forth. So the Urban League, for as helping me, it gave me a second chance. It gave me like uh, a place where I was safe. I felt secure. I got, I began to believe in myself, begin to trust in myself. I begin to heal, and I begin to believe in me once again with the help of others. The Urban League, I believe, with the staff, and it's so many people that work there, I can't name them all, but the ones that I came in contact with, all of them were so helpful. And it seems like if I asked them something, they would go over and above for me, over and above. That was made me feel very special because they would go over and above for a person that was homeless. And I am so grateful for the Urban League today. I believe without the Urban League, I probably would be still sleeping in that park, still walking around lost. So I believe the Urban League gave me a second chance to life.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sebastian Viteri, and I'm the Director of Finance Administration here at the Urban League. Today I'm going to present to you all the Statement of Financial Position comparison between fiscal year 2019 and fiscal year 2020. In the following presentation, I want to talk about the Statement of Financial Position, also known as a balance sheet. There, I'm going to compare the year 2019 with 2020. What first jumps into our mind is how 2020 was such a great year, even though we were going through a pandemic. This is all thanks to your support. Among our assets, we see there was a big increase in our current assets or liquid assets that we can use immediately to cover our current liabilities or debt. Our cash increased 1,754% or 880,404 from 2019 to 2020. We had an increase of 25% in our accounts receivable. We had in other assets a huge increase in 112,973.98. And our total assets, we had more than doubled from 2019 to 2020. We went from 1,050,236 to 2,185,922. It was an amazing number. I'm certain that the UL will continue to grow, most importantly to help our community. We see in the liabilities there was an increase in our debt, mainly because our line of credit and PPP loans, which grew to a total liabilities of $1,295,328. Even though our liabilities grew, we were able to increase our equity from $484,000. That's a 119% increase. Our total liabilities and equity matched our total assets to $2,185,922.32. Please, I encourage you to continue to support our mission. Greater things are yet to come. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Hello, my name is Alfreda Nelson, and I was born and raised here in Portland, Oregon. I went to grade school at Boise Elementary and Jefferson High School. I graduated in 1967. I'm retired. I usually did working in a factory like potato chips or cookies. I did some working at the hotels, like a desk clerk, the housekeeper. I did all kind of different aging and disability work with the seniors and disabled. The last year was like really up in the air. It was like really kind of frightening, knowing that we had to be shut in and not do all the things or go the places that we used to go. I've been done at the Urban League for about 3 years. I utilized a different service when they had the hair cutting, the barbers, The foot care, we had foot care done here. I've gotten some dental work done. I get the information for different health things that we can contribute to. I enjoy that they work with you one-on-one and they help you with any question that you have and show you how to get the information you need. The best thing that I have done with the Urban League is keeping active, utilizing all the activities that we have as far as the walking trips, going to different walking trips. I like the shopping at the different malls. I like going to the movie night when we had it here. I love playing bingo and calling bingo. And I really love the beanbag baseball team when we played with other senior centers. I think without the Urban League, we wouldn't have a lot of things that we do have. And I think that the membership or the people that come to the Urban League, we should spread the word and give out the information to get more people involved. Come down and join us. It's not just for seniors. I mean, it's just for seniors, but it's any age over 55.
On behalf of our chairman, Michael Llewellyn, other members of our board of directors, our staff, and volunteers, I want to thank you for joining us today for the Urban League annual meeting. We appreciate your time and attention and your support for our work, and I hope you won't wait a year before checking on us again. Please, I invite you to follow us on social media and to visit our website to learn more about our activities, how you can support and be involved, whether you want to be a volunteer or you're seeking to engage in our programs, or you want to join in support of our advocacy. There is something for all of you. Thank you so much for being with us today. Happy Juneteenth.